Good afternoon, traders. My name is Dan Pavilonis, Senior Commodities Broker at RJO Futures. Today is Wednesday, May 8th. I'm here with Kevin Craney, Senior Commodities Broker, Frank Cholly, Senior Commodities Broker. We're here today to discuss Friday's USDA report, supply and demand, coming out at 11 a.m. And we're going to just briefly discuss acreage, expectations, and everything else. Kevin, what do you think?
We have to certainly look at what the carry-out supplies are going to be. Right now, projections for corn are about 749 million, the average estimate. And last April, it was 757. Those are pretty tight stocks, all things considered. We'll certainly need to be watching the export side of things, and also from a livestock perspective, how much is being fed. And how much might be carried out to wheat, just given prices. Some of that came into play with the last report. But really, this old crop corn, from a pricing perspective, it's managed to find some support, and I think can continue to do so. But probably the most important part at this point is looking at new crop, where it's May 8th today. From the crop progress report on Monday, we saw only 12% of the corn crops have been planted, and really in some of those key states it's very low versus this time last year and even on the 5-year average, and that's really going to be a concern for yield going forward, particularly if we start to push later and later into the year.
Sure. Frank, what do you think?
Well, absolutely. We still have a very tight supply situation, and moving forward into the new crop, we have a situation, we have a weather market, and because of the volatility in the weather, we had a very late start. And the bears will argue that we could get caught up in short order, but it is starting to get to a point where it will affect the outcome, the yield. And we always put these baseline numbers out there on projections, what kind of production we'll have next year on the number of acres and 160 plus bushels per acre. I don't think we're going to see those kind of yields with this late of a start. Now, again, it's always up to the weather, and how it cooperates moving forward, but we're off to a late start, no doubt about it. And we have seen some of the usage switch as far as feed goes to the wheat. The wheat price for a while was trading the same as corn. That's normal to see that, but the wheat crop, winter wheat crop, is having some problems too. I mean, that crop the condition continues to deteriorate. While there's time for that crop to improve weather-wise, it could get worse too. So I think we're going to possibly see some acres switch from corn to beans. Right now, the weather is supportive. I think the downside is limited in the old crop because of the tightness. And then again, moving forward, we're going to continue to focus on the weather, which is probably the most critical thing right now. As soon as this report comes out, I think we're going to quickly forget about it and focus again on the coming week's weather, if we could get this crop planted or not.
Going back to corn, we only have 12% planted right now. Usually at this time of year we have 47% planted. It's the slowest pace since 1984. Do you think we could catch up? Do you think we're going to be able to hit the USDA estimates? I think it was 97.3 million acres.
Yeah, I do. I mean, it's late. Yeah, it is a late start, but give these farmers a week or a 2-week window, and technology is so much more advanced now where you can really get out and you can get after it and they can get the corn in the ground. I'm not as concerned about the date at this point. Corn can go in the ground really as late as May, and I've seen it put in June and still do okay. Does it reach its full yield potential? Maybe not, because it's pollinating during a lot of the heat stress, but I'm not as concerned at this point, and I do think that we can still reach those USDA numbers. I think an area that has to be watched, though, is the Dakotas, and in talking to some folks, I think you're starting to see a shift from what would have potentially been corn acres up there already to soybeans, just because their growing season is so much shorter up there, and they're having some problems with winter hanging on up there, and don't really want to run that risk of one, having to dry the corn, and two, running an early frost or freeze this season and killing it off before it matures.
Yeah.
Right, and you also bring up a legitimate concern as to the timing of pollination, and we hit this hot and dry period all the time, July into August, but perhaps this recharge of soil moisture we're getting right now could be what saves the crop when we hit that dry period. Again, it is going to depend, moving forward on do we have ideal weather conditions, because I think it is getting to that critical point where we will have to see nearly ideal weather, very timely rains, right amount of sun, and whatnot for that crop to get those kind of yields that we're looking for. It's not out of the question that we get the crop planted, but I think at this point we are starting to feel like we are going to lose some acres to the beans. It's sometimes easier said than done. If the farmer's already sprayed the ground for corn, he can't plant beans. Is that right? I mean, that's
right.
the way I understand it. So,
Yeah.
I mean, if he hasn't gotten that far, well, then maybe he could, turn his seeds in, get some credit, and plant some soybeans. I think this situation we're in weather-wise right now is a little more bearish for the soybeans than it is for the corn. But perhaps, again, all this rain we're getting now is what saves the crop later in the year.
Sure. The week of May 12th historically has been a great a great week during planting season to plant corn, and we usually get the most planting done in this particular week. The weather is in some areas still a little bit wet. In the Midwest, from what I was looking at, it looks like we should have kind of open, good, favorable planting conditions for the next 7 to 12 days.
Right, and that would explain, why the market's a little bit softer right now in terms of price.
Yeah,
I think
I
we're
agree.
seeing
And
that,
if you do
that possibility.
you look at those short-term forecasts, and it does look like there's going to be a window that opens up here in the Midwest here, where you're going to be able to get out into the field and get quite a bit done. And I think that's what a lot of farmers have been waiting on, and particularly when you look at old crop, the cash basis level has been elevated and continues to stay elevated on the interior basis here around the Illinois terminals. And really, you can't get farmers to give up what they've got already, because most of their minds are focused on getting the new crop out there and worrying about the old crop later, knowing that the board is trading under what basis is right now anyway, and they're waiting for higher prices potentially come back. So, I think once we have them get out in the field, get a little bit planted, take a little bit of that stress off, you start to see prices react a little bit differently, probably a little bit more to the downside for corn if they start to get out there and really get after it and the market sees that. But from an old crop perspective, I really think you have to pay attention to supply. Such a tight supply.
And it has to last.
And it does have to last, yeah.
Going back to supply, actually, we were talking about this earlier, Frank. Over the last 4 years, our supply has been slowly diminishing. I mean, we had the drought last year and planting conditions.
Right.
I mean,
when was the last time we saw 160 bushels? It's been a while.
It's been a while.
So.
It has.
And it's progressively gotten worse up until this past, 2012-13 crop that we're trying to, ration that supply right now. That yield was about 127 bushels or so, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, at some point, they were projecting an even lower number, but I think in the end we figured we had about 127 bushels, and we didn't get the total acres. We never do, but
Yeah.
That affects the final outcome. And
what moving over to beans now? I mean, we're at 2%. Typically at this time of year we're at 12%. Last year this time we're at 22%. It's on track to be the worst planting since 1984. Do you think? I know it's a wider time frame than corn to plant, but is it? Do you think we're going to catch up? Do you think we're?
Yeah, I don't think that right now we're overly concerned with the soybean planting. In fact, as I suggested earlier, we're hearing a lot of talk that beans will gain more acres here.
Okay.
Because of that wider time frame. And we're going to start to see, we've been talking about the South American farmers, loosening their grip on their old crop down there, the logistics releasing and getting, more supply out on their new crop down there. And we're starting to see a little less demand, I think, we haven't heard about it in a while, but the bird flu thing hasn't gone
Right.
away. And China's, you know, the biggest
I think they're up to like
buyer of our
143.
soybeans, aren't they?
Yeah, I think they're at
So-
143 cases right now, and yeah, their feed I think slowed down buying feed because of
Yeah,
that.
right.
Um,
So,
Yeah, and I think too, from a planting perspective, most farmers are going to want to go fence row to fence row corn if they can early. They're going to make the most money off of the corn crop. But I agree with Frank. At the end of the day, you are going to see some guys who are going to roll back into beans, and I do think that beans are really going to have to trade a tad bit higher here in order to encourage some people to actually put some acres
Right.
into soybeans. And really, if you think about it too, on a year-over-year basis, we've had so many farmers who went corn on corn on corn, and you know that it takes a lot out of the soil. There are a lot of other problems that can come into play if you keep going on a rotation like that. So you may get some people last minute who decide, you know what, maybe we'll go to beans with this acre, or this, you know, the next marginal acre just isn't worth it to put in corn. So I think there's a lot of factors that can come in play there that can actually increase the soybean acreage at the end of the day. But for now, I think every grower is bent on really putting out as much corn as they can to maximize profit with prices at these levels.
Okay. So what do you think is the most important, or what are you looking for on Friday's report?
I think probably the most important thing is probably what Frank said, is to take a look at the numbers. Have the ending stocks changed significantly?
Okay.
We want to look at the ending stocks. We're not expecting any big material changes, but if there were, that might affect things. And then we're going to go right to weather.
Okay.
We're going to take a look at the longer term forecast models, and we're going to see how much we could potentially get done over the next week, weekend, and so forth.
So going forward after the report, you guys both agree weather is going to be the most.
it's the real driver right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's it. We're talking about the USDA report on Friday. This is Kevin Craney, Frank Cholly Sr. And follow us on Twitter and Facebook. And remember, trading futures has a risk of loss and is not suitable for everyone. And I'm Dan Pavilonis. Talk to you later.